Good morning and welcome to the Eastman Financial Report. I'm Dan Eastman, your host, and today is Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we appreciate your viewership here at the Eastman Financial Report and throughout the day at all of the great programming you see on worldviewtube.com and here at Worldview Radio. As you know, I broadcast Monday through Friday from 11:30 to 12 Central Time from the great metropolis of the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, from the mighty Cobalt microphone. And this is what I've been doing for 3 years now. We're coming up on March. It'll be 3 years of broadcast, and it's all part of our ministry. As you know, WVW TV and WorldviewTube.com. This is a Christian ministry, and we bring forth the gospel message in our broadcasting throughout the day. This has been our passion, our goal, our ministry, just our blessing for the last couple of decades. We went live in 2006, and we've been broadcasting that from a Christian perspective ever since. And that's why we bring to the great marketplace of ideas the news and information of the day from a Christian perspective. And this is what we do. If you'd like to help us in this ministry, you can do that by going to worldviewfoundation.com and, of course, making a donation. A single donation is always a blessing to us, and it's appreciated. You can sign up for a monthly donation, and that has the added economic benefit of flattening our revenue curve a bit so we can better match cost to revenues and keep our bottom line positive, which means we can continue to broadcast free of charge. As you know, you're watching me today, and throughout the day, we don't have a paywall or a subscription. We bring forth this message into the great marketplace of ideas free of charge, just like the apostles did 2,000 years ago. They were going about the Middle East spreading the gospel message. They weren't charging an admission fee. That wasn't a form of entertainment. It was a gift freely given. And here we are 2,000 years later. We continue that ministry until the second coming, and we're very, very happy to be able to do it. So if you go to worldviewfoundation.com, you can make a donation. You can also help this ministry by doing business with the vendors you see advertising throughout the day on our network. We don't sell blocks of advertising time. Rather, we partner with companies we know and trust so that when you do business with them, a small portion of the proceeds comes back to us in the form of a commission, and that also helps us in our ministry. There's a third thing that you can do to help us out and help yourself out as well, and perhaps those you love. We have a new product called worldviewtube.com/vault. And if you subscribe to the vault, there's a little paywall there, but you have 24/7 on-demand access to an amazing collection of ministerial and spiritually uplifting material. As you know, Brandon Howes has written over 15 books, and many of those are now digital. And he has had events and conferences and seminars throughout the country. All of that's been captured. So all of that lives in the vault. So if you are sometimes in your life, you may be struggling, you may be spiritually looking for something, first and foremost, go to Scripture, because God speaks to us through His Word in Scripture. But if you'd like to be part of a larger church community or fellowship of believers, subscribing to the vault is a great thing, because there are days, everyone has days when you need a little uplifting. And if you subscribe to the vault, you can go into the vault and you can see some amazingly uplifting material. And keep in mind, we all know people who are struggling in life, personal issues, faith issues, financial issues. Giving them a gift to the vault makes a lot of sense, because again, it's a place that they can go at a time of need, log in and see some spiritually uplifting content. And of course, that helps our network as well. So that's how you can help our ministry. You can make a donation, and you can do business with the vendors you see advertising throughout the day, and you can subscribe to the vault and think about somebody in your life who could use this subscription as well, because this is all part of our bigger ministry, our bigger goal of bringing into that marketplace of ideas, that ever-expanding marketplace of ideas, content from a Christian perspective. And that's what we do. That's what we've been doing, and that's what we shall continue to do until the second coming. So let's talk about the news today. And of course, if you've been watching my show, I've been promising for 2 days now that I'm going to talk about this data center issue. And this is the day. We are going to take a deeper dive into the data center issue, because it's exploding all over the country. If you look at the big mainstream financial press, there's a big story on the front page of one of them today. And throughout the country, this is becoming a very contentious issue. And I want to break that down, because that's the purpose of the Eastman Financial Report. When I started this 3 years ago, the idea was, can I take critical thinking skills training out of the college classroom? It was my job to teach children, young adults, critical thinking skills so that they can be wiser and more educated as they graduated and live better lives of service and prosperity. Well, the idea was, can we take this to the airwaves and bring these same critical thinking skills to the airwaves so that folks watching this program learn to think deeper about the issues rather than just seeing the headlines that scamper across. It's like the silver minnow. You don't want to go lunging for the silver minnow. And also realizing that in this day and age of digital media, we have broken the cartel or the monopoly on government media, which, as I've talked about, if you go into the vault, you see the Eastman Financial Report reruns, pay the subscription, then you realize that media was created as propaganda in the 20s and 30s and 40s. First, radio with the fireside chats. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. Well, we had everything to fear, and it was the fear of the federal government that we should have been fearing. And then, of course, television comes along, and now you get to see the people talking to you, which just makes it more credible. And that's the way it is. Remember that? That's the way the Vietnam War was, according to one of those famous broadcasters. The point, it was all propaganda. But today, we have the democratization of media, and there's media all over the place. So you've got people with podcasts and people on X and people with a microphone and a camera. The point is, we are no longer tethered to the status quo or the propaganda media of the American past. We now broadcast freely until at least they turn the power off. So the point is, we want to use this now to talk about this data center issue, and you're starting to see real public reaction to that. And let's stop and think about what is this all about? Well, the idea, and of course you're watching this program, it's a digital thing. I've got the Cobalt microphone, of course, I've got the backdrop, I've got the camera, and we're broadcasting around the world. I mean, anybody who can log into the internet anywhere in the world can go to worldviewtube.com, and you can watch this program and all of our programming. It is a global reach, and this is what we're doing, and this is what everybody else in this space is doing. So how do you power this? How does this happen? I mean, you just didn't come out and fall from the heavens. It takes a lot of electrons to make this happen, because if you want to get detailed about it, when you look at the resolution on the screen, every one of those little pixels is being energized by electrons in a constant flow of electrical energy. And the world became a different place with the advent of electric power, and it has reached its, and I guess it's temporal narthex or apex at this point, although there's never an apex. It just keeps going. But the point is, technology became a real thing in 1984 with the advent, or at least the Apple computer commercial during the Super Bowl. The idea was personal computing power put this in the hands of the people. So it takes a lot of electricity to do that, and it takes a lot of data and the ability to process data. So along comes, fast forward from 1984 through today, we now have this phenomenon called artificial intelligence, which I use AI or artificial intelligence every day, and I'm still convinced that DI is much better than AI, which is Dan intelligence, because I've yet to not find holes in everything I've analyzed with AI. But it's coming, and it will be better, and it will be better and better. And of course, the way AI happens is that it crunches vast amounts of data into these very large learning models where it gathers facts, and it gathers zillions of facts and puts it all together in a way that facts can be compiled and then regurgitated into logical thought. But it takes right now a lot of electricity to do that, because this whole phenomenon is running on the hardware of the day. And this is where the problem becomes. In order to have not only data for great big companies like Amazon or big companies that are doing global business, but to power the ability to do artificial intelligence in every query and every person doing any kind of thinking or analysis at all, it takes a lot of electrons to do that. It takes a lot of electricity. So when you look at the installed base of our technology, and this is what computer servers do. Okay, these things run and they process data. data. They process lots and lots of data. Well, given the state of the art in hardware in the world today, in order to run the platforms, a digital platform like this platform, where I'm talking into a screen and broadcasting globally, but more importantly, on analytical platforms, we are analyzing certain facts or certain issues or certain financial deals or contracts or whatever. All of that takes a massive amount of electrical power given the existence of today's technology. So what happens? Well, if we go back to Adam Smith, our classical economic theory, there is a demand for data, and there's a technology available that will produce the type of data crunching that is needed and demanded. So therefore, people step into that marketplace and will build out these data center facilities in order to support the existing market, the demand for electrons to power the system. And that's what we're seeing with these data centers. They're a very big set of buildings with lots of existing state-of-the-art hardware inside. And you have to have electricity coming into the building to run the hardware, to process the data. The data goes out and makes all the programs work and everything. And the problem that we have on the political side and why this is becoming such a big issue is because the state of the art in hardware demands very large buildings full of servers, and it demands a lot of electrical power in order to produce the demand or the supply of data output that the marketplace is demanding today. So of course, developers step in and they're going to build a data center. Now, there are a whole bunch of issues that come around a data center that I want to address. There are some good reasons because we all use digital data all day long. I mean, for everything from your banks to your shopping to your online this, your online that, watching me right now, all of this is data driven. And of course, if you use artificial intelligence throughout the day, you realize that you don't know what you type a query into your screen and an answer pops up. But what you don't realize is the economic cost behind that process and the social costs, the environmental costs, and all of the costs. You just do it. So there's a very big demand, and supply is racing to meet demand. And that's what a clearing market or a free market will do. When there's a demand, a supply will appear, and you'll have at some point an equilibrium where supply equals demand, and at a certain quantity at a certain price, that's a clearing market. Well, we're in the ascendancy of that, and we need data capacity to run the modern world, theoretically, at least from the consumer perspective. And what we're seeing is the stampede toward building data centers. But if we look at it from the social cost perspective, and the question has to be asked, there are a number of costs. First and foremost, and the question that I'm asking, and full disclosure, I'm representing a group in Wisconsin that's not happy about a data center. It's part of what I do with my law practice. But the point is, we want to look at the fundamentals. And one thing we ask, this is a very, very large building, and it's maybe 2 miles from the shore of Lake Michigan, which is the largest body of fresh water in the world. Very helpful. That's why there's 2 nuclear power plants on the Wisconsin coastline, because you have a lot of water that you can cool things with. So it's logically makes sense to have a data center located near a natural gas burning generation station, which only produces 50 megawatts, nowhere near enough. And at the same time, you have lots and lots of water. So we think about, and the developers are thinking about, let's build one of these things because there's a great demand for the data that we can crunch the numbers and we can output the data, and somebody's going to buy the data and the thing will make economic sense. Let's do it. And of course, the question becomes, they'll build it. But the big question that we ask is, if you're building it for today's hardware technology, is that a proper thing to do? And there's a lot of social costs involved in building one. So let's review the social costs and the citizens, the costs that agitate the citizens, and then we'll come back to that final question. Does it make sense to do this? Is this a good use of capital? Are we allocating capital properly? Is there risk involved? Well, let's think first about the social cost, because that's what is catching the eye in the media. A big story today in famous newspaper newspaper published on Wall Street, talking about land use issues. When you build a very large facility, and we're talking about maybe 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 acres of land along a freeway, where you'll have 4 or 5 or 6 different buildings to house the hardware that will take electricity in, run the servers, crunch the numbers, and somehow the data zips back out into through the internet. What is the cost of doing that? And of course, a developer will come to town and they'll look for a couple of things. Number one, you need electricity. You've got to have enough electricity to run the plant, because these servers take a massive amount of electricity given the current state of the art of the hardware technology. And when you do that and you plug them all in, like if you have a desktop on your computer, maybe your laptop, you're sitting working on your laptop and you notice your lap is getting a little warm, and maybe your desktop, you can heat your small office in winter just by using your desktop. What happens is as electricity comes into the building and into these machines and it does its work, it emits heat. It's because it's physics. You basically have current coming in at a certain voltage, and then it does its thing, and then the output is heat. That's why if you plug in any electronic appliance in your wall and you touch it, give it 15 minutes, you'll realize it's a little warm. It's not on fire, it's not burning your hand, but it's warm. It generates heat because when you use electricity, the electricity generates heat. And in order to get rid of the heat, you have to cool the system. How do you cool the system? Well, if you're, a mile and a half from Lake Michigan, the theory is you pull the water in from Lake Michigan, you run it around some cooling, and then it goes back into Lake Michigan. It's a closed loop. What's wrong with that? The nuke plants have been doing it for years. The problem is it's a lot more complicated than that. And that was the story in the large. I don't mention names of other media outlets, but there's a great big newspaper printed near Wall Street that was talking about 400,000 gallons per day of water to cool a plant. And the point is, as you're pulling that much water resource, now we're blessed on the shores of Lake Michigan because we have the largest freshwater body in the world right here. And it's kind of cool, and the temperature's kind of cool as well. So it works really well. But when you're pulling that out of the groundwater in, an aquifer or a well, that is a lot of demand for water. So you end up with a big plant. And of course, the local cities love it because it adds to the tax base. Now, our deal, they're not getting $1 for 20 years, which there are some of us here who smile because if President Trump had negotiated this deal, every one of our sheriff squad cars would be a Rolls-Royce squad car, and our schools would have been paid for 50 years, and our highways would have been paved in gold. We would have got something for the deal. We got nothing for the deal. There's nothing. The city that this is located in got nothing for the deal. But they're excited because 20 years from now, they're going to be able to collect property taxes on a building full of equipment that's 20 years old. Now, if you've owned computer equipment, and everybody knows if you have a 20-year-old computer stuffed away in the attic or the basement, it's obsolete. Okay, so this thing isn't going to last 20 years at all. But the point is, the government sees tax benefit. It sees very little demand for schools or police or fire. I mean, the thing just sort of sits there and burns electricity all day, generates data. It's sort of the perfect community resident to have. Brings in tax revenue 20 years from now, and it doesn't cost you much to police it or protect it. And that's the real incentive that municipalities will sign up for. But what they're forgetting to understand is that there are huge demands on not only the environment and water, which is a scarce resource. We in Wisconsin don't think about. As a matter of fact, in our low volume washing machines and dishwashers, it's kind of a nuisance because we're sitting literally on the largest body of fresh water in the world, and it does recycle back. But the data plants here aren't going to be pulling cold, dirty water from the lake. It's all evaporative. So when the water comes in and it cools the systems and evaporates, well, what you end up with is a very concentrated post-liquid, very high in nutrients and very high in calcium and other contaminants, and the water evaporates away. Now, we hope when it rains back into Lake Michigan. The closed loop for nuclear plants tend to be flow. They'll flow back into the lake, but this is a different technology. So all of those issues are creating a problem for for the fact that you've got this type of a plant located in your community, and you get the mayor and the common council approving it, and you get the legislature passing very special TIF district and TIF district legislation way before the plant was announced, just to get this plant in place. And then the question becomes, and the ultimate question becomes, what do you do with the plant over the 20-year period before the tax revenue kicks in? And I'm going to take a quick break here, come back, and I want to finish the thought, and then we're going to get to the punchlines. I'll be right back. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Okay, so we understand that the local governments are enthusiastic about these data centers because they produce tax revenue and they don't have a lot of social costs like police and fire, and the school system isn't burdened because you have 1,500 acres of land with all these buildings. It's all privately owned, and theoretically, 20 years from now, it'll produce some tax revenue. But it seems like a good deal, even though they got nothing else for the deal. But when you think about it, and when you look at the capacity of these plants, the demand for electricity for this particular plant, and I'm using my example because I'm very familiar with it here, right here in southeastern Wisconsin, is that it will use enough electricity, the equivalent of 2.4 million homes in Wisconsin, which is a lot of homes. We only have like 4 million adults living in Wisconsin. When you add the Microsoft project that is being built in Racine County, which is south of Milwaukee, we're just north of Milwaukee, but south of Milwaukee, Microsoft announced they're putting 15 of these data centers in on the old Foxconn plant that was supposed to make TV screens. A Chinese operation, never opened. They increased the capacity of the freeway from O'Hare Airport in Illinois all the way to Mitchell Field in Milwaukee, 6 lanes. I mean, they built infrastructure, amazing infrastructure. It's like the Autobahn here in Wisconsin now, and they never opened the plant. Well, now Microsoft is opening the plant. So when this plant in Port Washington, Wisconsin, up the road here, opens up, and the Microsoft plants are running, lo and behold, it will take more electricity than all the homes in Wisconsin take. More electricity to run these 2 facilities than all of the homes in the state. Now, there's a real problem with that. And of course, my background, I spent 3 years as a member of the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, where it was my job, our job, the 3 of us, to regulate the electric system. And of course, if you go into the vault and watch the Eastman the financial report reruns, you'll realize, and I've talked about how electricity is contrived. You have generating capacity, then you have great big transmission lines that move the electricity from the generators across the state, across a place, to a distribution system, and that's where substations come in, and they reduce the amount of electricity, the voltage of the electricity, so that you can distribute it without frying everyone's TV set back to 110 or 220. So it's generation, transmission, and distribution. So in order to double the amount of demand, we're going to have to double the amount of generation. And let me tell you something, as a member of the Public Service Commission who had to go through some very difficult times dealing with trying to site and expand one generating station creates a lot of public blowback for environmentalists. They don't want carbon going up into the air. And of course, the water issue is always a big issue. Of course, nobody wants a generating plant in their backyard. And once you have a generating plant, you have to have transmission lines sufficient to generate the capacity. So one could argue that in order to finish these two plants, you're going to have to double the generating capacity of the state of Wisconsin to do it. And this will happen around the country because the current state-of-the-art hardware demands electricity at that level. So, of course, it will be built. And we have, like I mentioned, we have two nuclear plants on the Wisconsin shoreline. They have been, hypersensitive since the 1970s. One of them is actually temporarily shut down. They're dusting it off. They're going to build a new one, turn it back on because the transmission lines are already there. They don't have the transmission line fights. The point is, we're going to be building generation and transmission capacity to serve these plants, and it's going to take 10 or 15 years to get this all done. You can't build a generating station quickly. Now, I suppose this new miniature nuke plant idea, and that maybe this is the ultimate solution, that we'll just drop a miniature nuclear plant right in the middle of these data centers and right next to the old Walmart there. This is going to be great. But the point is, the capacity today isn't there. The generating capacity is not there, and even if it was, you have to boost out the transmission lines. And of course, there's a big fight because they're trying to bring transmission in from the west to serve this plant in Port Washington, and everybody whose land is affected is not happy about it. The point is, we're building this all out. We're building 1,600 acres of land, and we're putting up multiple buildings, chock-a-block full of state-of-the-art today's hardware. And then we're going to build generation and we're going to build transmission. And then what happens? And anybody who's got, a smartphone, I've got an old smartphone in my desk drawer here that's been obsolete for a long time. I can't even find it. What will happen when the technology changes? And today, there are software companies in existence that can process 90 to 95% of the data coming out of one plant on a desktop computer made by a famous computer company that's named after a fruit, okay? And what happens when quantum computing technology supplants the hardware server farm, which we're building, basically a big server farm? What happens to this stranded assets? You've grossly overbuilt electric generation that you don't need to the tune of billions of dollars. And of course, that's all captured in the ratepayers, the rates, including residential, small business, commercial. You're going to be paying for the generation and the transmission forever. That is a multi-generational cost. Well, what happens if the technology changes and you can do this in software, the fractal technology or other types of technology that is allowing you to process data blisteringly fast using existing 110 power coming out of your wall? And what happens if you fractal the data processing so that instead of processing it on 1,600 acres and building chock-a-block full of standard state-of-the-art hardware technology, you can do this by networking everybody who has a cell phone, and everybody's walking around being a little, fractal node and calculating into the great marketplace for data. The point is, the technology in 5 years will likely make these plants obsolete. But when you're pulling, and it might be good for the water resource because once the plant shuts down, you're not going to be cooling it. But when you think about the stranded costs of generation and transmission and the ability to take 1,600 acres of farmland and turn it into what will be unrecyclable. And there's no plan in place for anyone to take these plants down and restore the land to farmland. That's not. You build it, you turn it on, the developer's gone, whoever's running this system for 5 or 6 or 7 years is pulling data, and as technology changes, it just gets abandoned. They move on. And he said, well, that's a lot of money to abandon. And I said, yes, it is, because if you look at the Foxconn deal in Racine County, they spent a lot of money. They bought up a lot of land. They built a lot. Well, they didn't build too much of anything, but the government, the states built an interstate highway, according to the feds. The point is, it's a stranded asset problem, and technology moves way too fast to be pouring all of these dollars into stranded generation, stranded transmission, wasted farmland, a question about the water resources, and not to mention EMF and all of the other types of things you get when you run high quantities, big amounts of electrons moving in current. It tends to, there's studies that show it tends to have some physiological effects on human beings. So the point is, these things are controversial, as we all know, but you need to be looking at the deeper question. And the real deep question is, 5 years from now, can we do this with software or quantum computing hardware technology that makes the state-of-the-art servers of today the junk of tomorrow? Are we building dinosaurs? Yes, we are. And that's what we ought to be thinking about. That's when that silver minnow goes swimming by. Is that a dinosaur minnow, or is that the minnow that'll get you the muskie? Anyway, I'm out of time for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, fire them off to the network. I'll be happy to talk about data centers all day long. And enjoy your afternoon, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.
We have a big announcement, folks, something we've been waiting on for several months, and it's now here. It's called Bella Melt. You were on it for just 1 week when you lost 3 pounds. So in the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. It's a sugar-free, fast melt caramel. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings.